Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So today we have the Smithey 7.25 quart Dutch oven, and this was just released, I want to say about a week or so ago. So I'm very excited to unbox this for you guys. We're also going to do a little bit of baking in the second portion of this video, so stick around for that. But for now, let's get to the unboxing. Alright guys, and the first thing you're greeted with is a lovely letter here on the box, along with instructions and guides, tips, which they provide tips on the first use. They also give you information on what to cook and also cleaning and taking care of your cast iron cookware. And for those of you, they also provide a second piece of paper that indicates or pretty much gives you tips on how to season, because yes, this is bare iron, you have to season it. They give you the oven method, the stovetop method, along with a broiler method. Now, getting into the Dutch oven itself, the lid, I can tell right away, is really well designed. I like the basting design that it has already. Also, I love the Smithey logo on the top, along with the font and lettering, the brass knob, very beautiful, very elegant. The other thing that I said earlier was the basting. I do like this because it provides good moisture for your cooks, whether it's slow roasting, whether it's braising. It's just going to provide better moisture throughout your food. Now, the other thing that I do want to mention is that the casting might look a little rough, but it's actually far from that, because I do believe they actually place it in a tumbler. Now, the other thing is that this tag here was supposed to be attached to the handle. For some reason, mine is not. Now, this tag actually gives you a little bit of information from the founder, along with their philosophy, their startup, and as I mentioned, some history behind the Smithey company. Along with, if you have any issues or questions with your product, they do have a guarantee and also a contact number. All right, guys, now getting into the Dutch oven itself, the bottom portion is pretty heavy, but not as heavy as you might think, because the handles are very ergonomical and easy to maneuver. Once again, I just love their design aesthetic, very beautiful. A couple of grind marks here and there that I don't like, but overall a pretty beautifully casted piece of cast iron cookware. As I mentioned, some issues here and there that I don't like, but the handles are probably the best handles on a Dutch oven at the moment. I love how ergonomical they are and provide good stability when you are taking it out of the oven or moving it from the stovetop to the oven, or vice versa. Either way, you're going to have great control. All right, guys, now let's move on to some stats. This retails for $375 US. That is not including shipping. Also, if you guys are curious, that lid also fits the 12-inch skillet. All right, now we're also going to measure. So the top diameter is right at 12 inches, so great size there. And I also want to give you guys the measurements for the cooking surface. We're looking close to 11 inches, so great size there as well. The depth of it is about 4.5 inches, so good size overall. Last, I want to give you guys weight. The bottom portion of the Dutch oven is coming in at 12 pounds 1.9 ounces, which technically is 12 pounds 2 ounces. And of course, I want to give you guys an overall weight. So with the lid, we're looking at 18 pounds 0.6 ounces, which is technically really 18 pounds, which obviously it's very heavy. We're not going to lie. Now, last measurement here is going to be the full height of it with the lid, which is about 8 inches. All right, guys, so lastly, I want to show you this little minor difference that's kind of bothering me, but if you can tell, the knobs are different. One is a solid brass piece, which is on the 7.25 quart, and my 3.5 has a aluminum knob, which I don't know why they have those differences, but they do. All right, guys, with all that said and done, we're going to move on to the baking portion of the video, which I've done a lot of videos lately of the breads, the artisanal breads or the country loaves that I've baked. And I don't think I've gone really much into detail about the recipes that I've used. And there are many recipes online, and you can use the ones from Jim Leahy, which is, the one that actually went viral back in 2020 when the pandemic started. But the one that I like using and the one that I'm going to show you guys today is actually from Preppy Kitchen. He is a YouTube channel here that does a lot of baking, a lot of cooking. He also does a lot of cast iron cookware, like cooking. So that's one of the reasons why I also follow him. Now, what you're gonna need is some bread flour. We're gonna need about 450 grams or 3.5 cups of this bread flour. We're gonna need some salt, which is about 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 packet of yeast, and also 1.5 cups of warm water. And you want this water to be about 115 to 105 in temperature. So make sure that you also have a thermometer. And this is the yeast that I like using. Now you can use the normal one because this is the rapid rise or the bread machine yeast. It doesn't matter. You can use, like I said, the standard, the original one. But one tip here that I do want to provide for you guys is that what I like to do first is add my salt first. So this is what I do. I add the salt, mix it in really well, and then after that I add the yeast and then mix it in really well once again. And the reason being is that you don't want to place your yeast right on top or anywhere near your salt because it can actually kill your yeast and you're not going to have any good results for your bread once it's baked. So that's just one of the tips that I've learned and picked up over the amount of times that I've made bread. But I am no way saying that I'm a professional baker, but that's just something that I wanted to share with you guys. Now, once you get this all mixed in really well, then you're going to add your water. So the other tip that I also wanted to provide to you is that with this recipe, you're gonna notice a lot of flour that's gonna be left over when you're mixing it together. Don't be worried about that. Really quick, guys, the water here is at 107 degrees. It did go down. I did have it at 115, and it is 1.5 cups of water. So once you add the water, as I was saying earlier, continue mixing. Do not add any more. And that's one of the other tips that I wanted to share with you guys. Just continue with what you have. And the reason being is that you don't want to overhydrate your dough. So just keep going. And this whole process actually took me about 6 minutes. And you're not going to need any fancy equipment. You're going to mix it with your spoon, all by hand, and technically you're not kneading it, you're just incorporating it really well. Obviously this, as I mentioned, is going to take time, and it is going to be a shaggy dough once it forms really well. Just continue mixing. Do not add water. Don't be scared about the way it looks. You might be thinking to yourself that it's not working or that you messed up your ratios. As I mentioned, don't worry about that. After that, we're going to let it proof for 2 hours, but if you want, you can actually refrigerate it. All right, guys, so after the 2 hours, my dough actually doubled in size. Now, I did shake it, so some of those air bubbles kind of deflated the dough, but we're going to be using the bowl to do a fold, like stretch and fold technique inside the bowl. You don't have to take it out. It's easier this way. So the stretch and fold is going to be pulling it up, folding it over, and then turning it 90 degrees. Now, the other thing that I do recommend is that you get your fingers wet so that way the dough doesn't stick to you because it is still kind of sticky and tacky at the same time. So anyway, so as you can see here, what I'm doing is pulling it up, folding it over, and then turning the bowl 90 degrees. Now, you do want to do this at least 9 times. I do recommend that you do this 9 times. Don't do it less. And the reason being is that you're trying to get your dough to form that gluten that it needs, and that stretching is also going to provide your dough to get ready for shaping. So we're going to do that in a minute. We're going to let that rest for about 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes that it's been resting, we're going to flour this surface and we're going to place our dough onto this floured surface. I also do recommend that you flour your fingers so that way the dough doesn't stick to your hands. All right, guys, so once we get our dough onto the floured surface, we're going to do the same technique that we did in the bowl, which is the stretch and fold, only for a little bit. And then after that, what we're going to do is actually shape it into a ball. What you want to do is actually grab it and then tuck it inward from the sides down to the bottom and keep rolling it, and use the flour on the surface so that way it doesn't stick to your fingers. And we're pretty much getting it ready for a second rise. And as I mentioned, no kneading here. All you got to do is just shape it, get it ready for that second rise. So we're actually going to sprinkle a little bit more of flour on top of it and cover it with a towel and let it rise for another 30 to 40 minutes. Now, while we're doing that, we're also going to preheat the oven to 450 degrees and also the Dutch oven at the same time. All right, guys, so after the 40 minutes, we're going to actually have to be moving fast here. So I did take out the Dutch oven. We're going to take off the lid. I'm also grabbing some ice. The reason being is that I want to actually create steam in my Dutch oven once I place my dough in there. Now, for those of you that are curious to know what the dough looks like, this is what it should roughly look like. And once you have it at that, we're going to get it ready to place it onto a piece of parchment paper. Now, I also recommend that you use a piece of parchment paper so that you can place it in there without burning yourself. And also taking it out is going to be a lot easier. Now, the other tool that I do recommend that you use is a bench scraper. The reason being is that it's easier for you to lift the dough without you pretty much mashing the dough onto the piece of parchment paper. And I almost forgot, actually, we're going to need something sharp. So I'm using a very sharp knife and we're going to score the bread. Now, this is a step that I do recommend that you do. Do not skip it. And the reason being is that you want to create steam in the Dutch oven, and that's going to give the dough a good oven spring so it forms really beautifully once it's baking. So as I mentioned, try to move as fast as you can, get it in there, but at the same time, be careful. Now, once we get the dough in there, we're going to throw in the ice cube. And then after that, I'm going to do my best to run and grab the lid, place it in there, and then, place it back into the oven. So once it's in the oven, we're going to let it bake for 30 minutes with the lid on. After the 30 minutes, we're going to take it out, take off the lid, and remove the parchment paper. Place it back in there, and we're going to let it go for about 15 to 20 minutes until we get a good golden crust. And at the end, you should be able to hear this. All right, guys, and there you have it. So not as scary as you might think to bake bread. So the Smithy did a great job. I was so happy to do this, especially baking and reviewing the Smithy. If you guys have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. And as always, I appreciate your time. Thank you guys for watching.